Hello and a very good morning. You're watching the Breakfast News on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Pereira. Let's begin with the headlines. Lankan Foreign Minister Mangala Samaravira to call on Prime Minister Modi today, looking to set the stage for a new dimension to India-Lanka ties under the new President Maithripala Sirisena. BJP Parliamentary Board to meet today to decide on Chief Ministerial candidate for Delhi. The party is also due to release its first list for the polls less than 3 weeks away. Information and Broadcasting Minister Arun Jaitley indicates norms are in the offing for the media coverage of terror-related operations. US asks Pakistan to ensure no terror incidents take place during Obama's India visit, subtly warns of consequences if any attacks are traced back to the country. And the fortnight-long Australian Open is underway. India's Yuki Bambri plays Britain's Andy Murray in a first-round match today. Our top focus on the bulletin this morning. Sri Lankan Foreign Minister Mangala Samaravira is in New Delhi for talks that are likely to pave the way for the visit of new Sri Lankan President M. Sirisena to India. He'll be meeting the Prime Minister today. Sri Lanka had released 15 Indian fishermen as it looks to reach out to India under the new regime. Here's more.
A new dispensation in Sri Lanka signalling a likely shift in its approach to neighbouring India. On Sunday, Lankan Foreign Minister Mangala Samaravira started his Delhi visit by calling on Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj. The delegation-level talks focused on bilateral and regional issues.
Today's talks have been marked by warmth, mutual respect and understanding between India and Sri Lanka, and the substantive outcomes demonstrate the desire of both countries to give a boost to our bilateral ties.
Samaravira is slated to call on Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday as a goodwill gesture ahead of his visit. Lanka also released the 15 Indian fishermen who were in custody. This had emerged as one of the sticking points in bilateral relations in recent weeks.
The Sri Lankan External Affairs Minister informed that they are working on a modus operandi for return of the boats of Indian fishermen which are now in Sri Lanka. So he has assured that they will work out a solution on this very quickly.
The Lankan Foreign Minister's visit also assumes significance in the wake of reports that Sri Lanka expelled an research and analysis wing official in Colombo. Media reports quoted political and intelligence sources alleging that in the run-up to this month's presidential election, the Indian official helped the opposition to oust Sri Lankan President Mahinda Rajapaksa. An Indian Foreign Ministry spokesman denied charge and the expulsion. To state that the transfer was a routine decision, Rajapaksa himself reportedly denied any knowledge of the issue.
The normal tenure of an Indian diplomat in Sri Lanka is 3 years, and all officials who've been transferred during the last year have completed that. So it's a normal transfer.
Rajapaksa's unexpected defeat after 2 terms in office coincides with Indian concerns that China's influence was increasing in the island nation. New Prime Minister Sirisena has, however, been quoted as saying that his government will revert to the old non-aligned policy on India, while he insisted that it won't be against Chinese investment either. Sirisena also said he was likely to visit New Delhi on his first foreign trip next month. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, joining me for a chat this morning on this very issue is a foreign affairs expert, Professor S.T. Muni. Professor, good morning and thank you for joining me on the program. How do you look at ties going forward? Under the previous regime, under Rajapaksa's regime, we saw that the ties between India and Sri Lanka weren't all that good because Rajapaksa was leaning closer towards China. But this regime seems to have changed all of that.
Well, you're true because apparently the relationship went all right. But there were issues which were stuck in between. China was a major factor, particularly the use of Colombo and Sri Lankan ports for the submarines and other issues, which was unnecessarily irritating. And I don't know why the Colombo regime of Rajapaksa really allowed this kind of a thing. particularly when we have since 1987 a mutual security understanding and agreement under which this is not really welcome. But there were other issues also, like the comprehensive economic partnership agreement
Yes.
was being debated and it was not moving forward. Some of the Indian projects were facing a lot of bureaucratic hassle and difficulties, which may be considered as normal, but I hope that with the new dispensation, some of these irritations would be taken out. Rajapaksa tried to play it both the ways, but naturally, the way the Chinese economic presence has been getting into Sri Lanka, not only India and the international community, but even Sri Lankans were very, very disturbed about that. The new president, in his campaign and even earlier, said that we are under so much of a debt, and most of the projects are very highly valued, inflated in terms of putting that burden on Sri Lanka.
Yes.
So there was an internal unease as well.
Indeed.
On the China factor.
Indeed. Now, the kind of messages that have been coming through from Sri Lanka are very positive, aren't they? The Sri Lankan foreign minister is going to call upon Prime Minister Modi today. So what can we expect from that meeting? What can we expect during this visit of the foreign minister of Sri Lanka?
See, one public debated issue is the question of fishermen. I think this is an issue which we should get off the table very soon. And India needs to do something unnecessarily under the Tamil Nadu pressure. And this is true that we have a huge fishing industry in Tamil Nadu, which depends upon these fishings. But, Sri Lankans also have a point that many times these fishermen cross, knowingly or unknowingly, the maritime boundary and run into problems. So I think it is high time the two sides sat down to discuss it. But in addition to that, I think the point should be reiterated that security-wise, Indian and Sri Lankan security cannot be separated.
Yes.
We are so close, we are so strategically located, and therefore, while China is engaging with many South Asian countries, including India, I mean, we have got investments offer of, say, $20 billion from the Chinese, and we would work upon it. So the question is not of economic engagement. The question is of transforming this economic engagement into a strategic space to the discomfort and to the sensitivity of our securities, which should be avoided. And I hope this government. Secondly, on the Tamil question, we have been telling Colombo for a long time that it is time to accommodate the Tamils and give them their due rights, and which should be. The present government, the new government, has promised democratization and consolidation of democracy, which in itself would be a great relief. Immediately after coming, they have changed the military governor of Jaffna province and put in a civilian person, which has helped the Tamil National Alliance, which is in power there, feeling relaxed. And I think more and more gestures, yesterday even Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe said that we will try and accommodate the sensitivities of the Tamils. I think on the whole, if democratization is consolidated, I am sure the Tamils would be happy, Muslims would be happy, and minorities, incidentally, played a very critical role in the victory of the present
president and the present regime. Indeed. Another issue that cropped up yesterday was that of the royal official allegedly playing a role in the elections and him being transferred immediately and sent back to India. That was plastered across every newspaper. But then the MEA spokesperson came out and gave a clarification saying that it was routine and don't read too much into it. Now, is there an issue as far as that is concerned, or do you think it's a closed chapter?
I tell you, I think most of our neighbors find it fashionable to attack RAW, attack Indian intelligence, and attack Indian interference whenever something undesirable goes on their account. This is a very, very old practice, and I have been studying South Asia and find it almost everywhere. Any neighbor you can name it. Now, it is, I think, a very calculated move, perhaps on the part of the defeated regime, to blame India, and not only blame India, dent the credibility of the present regime. To say that you have been brought to power by somebody else actually is, and this was a campaign which Mr. Rajapaksa was running in any case, that if you remove me, the foreign countries would interfere, and I am the most stable, and so on and so forth. So I think there is a deep political angle, even within Sri Lankan present dynamics, and it is better ignored, I would say, because as I said, this is a very old, very well known practice all around.
All right, Professor, we'll have to leave to that. Thank you so much for joining us on the program
so
this
much.
morning and putting things into perspective for us and sharing your views on that
so
subject. Moving on now, of course, BJP's parliamentary board is set to meet today to come out with a name of its candidate for the Delhi Assembly polls. After Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Kiran Bedi is set to launch her party's campaign in the national capital. Despite her hints that she is ready to lead the party in the polls, there is still no clarity on whether the BJP will name a chief ministerial candidate. Here's a report.
Amid speculation that former Delhi top cop Kiran Bedi would be projected for the Chief Minister's post in Delhi, BJP has not taken any decision yet. Home Minister Rajnath Singh clarified that the party has not decided whether to name anyone for the post before the assembly polls. He said the final decision will be taken by the parliamentary board of the party, which is expected to meet on Monday. The meeting is likely to finalize the name of the candidates. Despite key rivals Aam Aadmi Party and Congress coming out with list of most of their candidates, BJP is still busy to even formally pick someone to lead the party's campaign. But leaders in the party are giving a hint that Bedi is likely to be pitched against Aam Aadmi Party convener Arvind Kejriwal.
The party is meeting tomorrow, that is 19th of January, to have a decision on who would contest from what seat and whether we are projecting a CM candidate or not. But having said this, I would say that surely the mood of Delhi has changed. The mood of Delhi today is iron woman versus I run man. The man who is on run.
बीजेपी को सबसे सुंदर दुनिया का सबसे अहम चेहरा मिल चुका है वो है नरेंद्र मोदी जी का नेतृत्व इसके बाद तो सब छोटे छोटे स्टार्स हैं हम असली सन है जो ये स्टार्स उनके आसपास घूम रहे हैं लेकिन ऊर्जा उसी से लेंगे क्योंकि सारे साधन सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के उनके पास है तो दिल्ली जब स्थिर सरकार होगी आपको साधन देने वाली सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट है हमने सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट से बहुत कुछ लेना है सारी बजटिंग तो ज्यादा से ज्यादा हमने उनसे लेनी है
Kiran Bedi will launch her campaign in Delhi on Monday. She will be the first BJP leader to hold a rally in the capital after the date for elections were announced. She outlined her agenda for Delhi at a party meeting on Sunday.
अगर हम चाहते हैं कि हम हेल्दी बॉडी बनाएं दिल्ली को हेल्दी सिटी बनाएं हर डिपार्टमेंट को पूरी ऊर्जा देनी पड़ेगी नहीं तो वो डिपार्टमेंट है क्यों अगर वो लेस इंपॉर्टेंट है तो वो है क्यों आपको याद है जब मुझे तिहाड़ जेल भेजा गया था समझा गया था वो लीस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट डिपार्टमेंट मुझे भेजा गया क्या वो लीस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट रहा क्योंकि मैंने ये महसूस किया होगा आपके दिमाग में लीस्ट होगा सरकार के डिपार्टमेंट में जिसने मुझे भेजा लेकिन मेरे लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है
Meanwhile, Aam Aadmi Party continued to take its jibe at BJP after Kiran Bedi's induction just days before the polls. On Saturday, Kejriwal had alleged that Bedi was inducted in the BJP to save Modi's face in the event of a defeat. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, Information and Broadcasting Minister Arun Jaitley has hinted at restricting live media coverage on terror-related operations. Jaitley said yesterday that the issue is under very advanced consideration of the government on norms for media coverage. He said that the manner in which anti-terror operations by security agencies was covered is one of the most important issues with regard to responsibility of media in contemporary times. The INB minister said that intelligence agencies had claimed that real-time coverage of 26/11 terror attacks in Mumbai had helped the handlers of the terrorists to get information about what the security agencies were doing. However, Jaitley also said that the age of a ban on media organizations was over and technology had rendered censorship impossible. However, he questioned the intrusiveness of the media in certain cases where privacy of individuals is violated.
When a security operation is in full play, the desire of the media to be an actor in these events and to go into the midst of the scene and therefore report from the spot as to what is happening, or should the media have some constraints? Our security agencies and the Ministry of Defence is clearly of the view that this cannot be allowed. And therefore, during the limited duration where security operation is on. A very strict discipline on the kind of reporting which is to take place from the place of the incident will have to be imposed. The privacy of individuals, even in high-profile cases, is also a part of their right. And therefore, the media will have to evolve an ethics as to what was the relationship between a husband and a wife, what was the kind of conversations they were having. Now, these areas which have absolutely no bearing on larger public interests can only add some spice to the content of the reporting. The media will have to seriously introspect as to what extent this has to be reported.
Well, we'll slip into a short break now, but still to come. Swine flu concerns grow with more cases reported across the country. The government orders a fresh tranche of retroviral drugs to take on the potential outbreak. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Let's take a look now at some major news-making events lined up for the day today in our special segment, The Day Ahead. The BJP is likely to declare its first list of candidates for the Delhi polls today. The party's parliamentary board will meet today to take a final decision on the names, including the chief ministerial candidate. Speculations are rife that former IPS officer Kiran Bedi, who joined the party last week, will lead the party's campaign. The national capital goes to polls on February 7th. And as the poll date nears, campaigning picks up in the national capital. BJP's Kiran Bedi will kickstart her campaign today with a roadshow in Rohini, while AAP convener Arvind Kejriwal will continue with his Sabhas in different parts of the city. Congress President Sonia Gandhi, Vice President Rahul Gandhi and 6 party chief ministers will address poll rallies this week. The reconstituted high-level climate panel is scheduled to meet today. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will chair the meet, which seeks to review the National Action Plan on climate change. Besides Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar, the panel comprises of 18 other members, including External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley and Water Resources Minister Uma Bharti. President Pranab Mukherjee will address students and faculty members of central universities through video conferencing today. It will be a New Year message from the President for students studying in IITs, NITs and other premier institutions. The Interministerial Panel Telecom Commission is scheduled to meet today. Key issues like the National Optical Fibre Project, which is moving at a very slow pace, are likely to be discussed. Members are also expected to discuss 3G auction-related modalities if telecom regulator TRAI sends its response. Moving on now, swine flu cases across the country are rising rapidly. Around 29 cases of fresh swine flu have been reported in Gujarat's Kutch region, including 1 death. The Union Health Ministry said that the government has ordered for procuring 30,000 doses of antiviral drug to treat a potential outbreak. State authorities have already issued strict instructions to hospitals to identify early cases of swine flu. Andhra Pradesh and Telangana have been the worst hit with 100 cases and 18 deaths, while the national capital is also witnessing a steep rise with over 100 cases and 4 deaths so far. Rajasthan also has reported 23 positive cases and 9 deaths. The virus has also set foot in Haryana, infecting 8 people. Moving on now, eminent cartoonist R.K. Lakshman is in a critical condition in a hospital where he was admitted on Saturday. A medical report last night said that the 94-year-old legendary cartoonist was admitted to the intensive care unit of Dinanath Mangeshkar Hospital in Mumbai for urinary infection. He underwent dialysis and is reported to be critical but stable. Doctors said that Lakshman has been put on a ventilator support after a multi-organ failure. Through his iconic character of the common man, R.K. Lakshman, in fact, has held a mirror to the society by creating satire targeting politicians for more than 5 decades. However, of late, he has stopped sketching political cartoons. Moving on now, of course, Indian security officials are pulling out all stops to ensure US President Obama's safety on his India visit. Now Pakistan has a lot to worry about too. The US has asked Pakistan to ensure that there is no cross-border terror incident during the trip and subtly warned of consequences if any such attack is traced back to the country. The US has reportedly asked Pakistan to ensure that there is no cross-border terrorism or even attempts of it during Obama's trip. The warning has been issued, keeping the track record of Pakistan-based militant groups that have carried out attacks in India coinciding with high-profile visits from the US. US forces in Afghanistan are also keeping a close eye on the activities of the terrorist groups in the region. Here's a look now at some news and updates from around the world in our World Wrap. The Islamic State released about 200 captive Yazidis held for months in Iraq. Almost all of the freed prisoners are in poor health and bore signs of abuse and neglect. The captives are receiving medical treatment due to their poor state. Islamic State militants attacked Yazidis in northwest Iraq last year, killing or capturing and enslaving thousands of the minority group. Protests in Niger left 10 people dead as rioters torched churches, wrecked bars and blocked several major roads during 2 days of demonstrations against Charlie Hebdo's cover depicting the Prophet Muhammad. Anger has swept parts of Africa, the Middle East and Asia after Charlie Hebdo ridiculed Islam in its survivors issue published after the Jan 7th attack on its Paris offices. Nigerian Islamist group Boko Haram has kidnapped dozens of people in raids in Cameroon. Reports say many of those kidnapped in the cross-border attack against villages were children. Boko Haram has seized control of towns and villages in northeast Nigeria and begun threatening neighboring nations. Belgian authorities are seeking the extradition of one of 4 people detained in Athens in connection with a foiled plot to attack police in Belgium. The statement came hours after Belgium said there was no connection between those detained and the alleged plot. More than 20 people have been arrested in Belgium, France and Germany in the wake of security threats across Europe. There has been heavy fighting in Donetsk, eastern part of Ukraine, as government forces upped operations against Russian-backed militants. A government spokesman said Ukrainian forces had retaken most of the area around the bitterly cold contested airport. Residents of Luhansk marched holding Ukrainian flags and gathered in a public square to call for peace in the ongoing conflict between government troops and pro-Russian separatists. Moving on now, foreign direct investment inflows into the country grew by 22% to $18.9 billion during April to November 2014. The Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion said that the telecom sector received the maximum FDI of $2.47 billion in the first 8 months of the current fiscal, followed by services at $1.84 billion, automobile at $1.53 billion and pharmaceuticals at $1.15 billion. The maximum FDI inflow was from Mauritius at $5.2 billion, followed by Singapore at $3.74 billion and the Netherlands at $2.42 billion. Well, all eyes are on the upcoming budget to see what steps the new Modi-led BJP government has in store for the defence sector. Defence spending is expected to be raised by a huge 12% in order to provide sufficient funds to allow purchase of equipment that's urgently needed by the country. Here's more.
Recent reports have highlighted gaping holes in India's defence apparatus, mainly stemming from lack of purchases of modern artillery guns for over 2 decades, a depleted submarine fleet and aging fighter aircraft fleets. All eyes are on how the upcoming budget will address these shortcomings.
There is no doubt that we require modernization urgently. The buying of equipment which is up to date and technology-wise, both whether it's aircraft, whether it is something required for the soldier on the ground. But this 12% I cannot really comment upon on what basis they worked it out. But it's definitely good that something has been talking about increasing the budget and meeting the initial requirements.
The government is expected to raise defense spending by nearly 12%, adding nearly $4.5 billion to the current $38 billion spending. Hopes are also high that the budget will give armed forces much needed impetus to energize the defense sector. It is also expected to factor in the twin threats from both China and Pakistan in order to speed up the pace of arms purchases for the world's third largest military setup.
When you talk of a defense budget, there is no increment which could be called as enough, because always there is a need for more. But usually when the budgets are announced, all immediate requirements and near future requirements are taken into account. So from my perspective, I think they must have taken the near future requirements into mind, and based on that, this budget increase must have been produced.
Experts say the priorities for the government include modernizing the forces, clearing long-pending projects and increasing indigenous weapons production. Matching up to China's war capabilities is yet another concern. With Palak Sharma, Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And for updates from the world of sport, here's the latest sports beat. The much-awaited Australian Open 2015 is underway at the Hisense Arena in Melbourne. In the men's singles, world number 8 Grigor Dimitrov is all set to beat Germany's Dustin Brown, while third-seeded Simona Halep is looking confident against her Italian rival Karen Knapp in the women's category. India's Yuki Bambri will face world number 6 and two-time Grand Slam champion Andy Murray in a first-round match today. It was a close finish in the end, with Australia defeating India by 4 wickets in the second ODI of the ODI Tri-Series at the Melbourne Cricket Ground on Sunday. Batting first, India put up a total of 267 runs for the loss of 8 wickets, with Rohit Sharma scoring 138. In reply, Australia started strongly, reaching 200 with a loss of only 2 wickets. They eventually made it to 269 after losing 8 wickets and with just 6 balls to spare. Australia have won both their games so far and are almost confirmed for a place in the finals. Ahead of the Cricket World Cup 2015, Indian bowling side seems to be in deep trouble after its key players face injuries. Indian pacer Ishant Sharma picked up a knee niggle ahead of the 4th test in Sydney, and Ravindra Jadeja missed the entire test series owing to an injured shoulder. Though Ishant and Jadeja have almost recovered, they were kept out of the Tri-Series opener against Australia on Sunday, which further weakened the young bowling unit. South Africa's AB de Villiers scored the fastest century in ODIs on Sunday against West Indies in Johannesburg. De Villiers needed just 31 balls to reach 105 balls fewer than Corey Anderson's record for New Zealand against the same team. Earlier, he also broke the record for the ODI 50 by reaching the milestone in just 16 balls. His innings included 16 sixes, equaling the record set by Rohit Sharma on the way to a score of 209 against Australia in Bangalore. Well, it was a pleasant Sunday in Delhi, with temperatures rising slightly in the afternoon, but the fog is back with a vengeance this morning. Visibility fell less than 50 meters in the national capital due to thick fog, and as expected, all modes of transport, rail, road and air traffic have severely been affected. As many as 70 flights and 72 trains have been delayed. Vehicular movement on roads was also affected due to low visibility. The minimum temperature was recorded at 9 degrees Celsius. Well, that's it on this edition of the Breakfast News. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.